keep the peace and make sure that we go through this electoral process without injuring each other. That is extremely important because there is a Uganda beyond elections, and the world is not coming to an end. The tub is not out of the, I mean, the bottom is not out of the tub. So I just wish everybody the very best during this season. Okay,
counting 10 days to election day, or Ambassador Mayiga, you are an NRM, of course, supporting and looking for the vote for President Museveni, your candidate. How much and how far, if the election is actually supposed to happen today, where do you gauge yourselves, where do you see yourselves, and what do you think has not yet been done that you need to do better before the 14th of this month?
Well, that's a good question, but of course, I just want us to look at the things that have been happening over the last, should I say, about 4 weeks. Because when you find an opposition-leaning newspaper fearing to publish the polls, opinion polls, that tells quite a lot of things. Because definitely my candidate is leading in those polls, and therefore, when you find a newspaper, really big one in the country, failing to publish those opinion polls, because in their view, that is not the candidate to support. That tells of how this candidate is strong. My candidate, of course, is President Yoweri Museveni. And when you find the opposition without having really an agenda to sell, not even concentrating on what is written in their manifestos, but rather referring to my candidate as a dictator without even substantiating those claims, that tells of how my candidate is very strong. And therefore, so that, in my view, points in the direction that this one is a fait accompli. My candidate is winning these elections, there is no doubt about it, and so that's why quite a number of people who have, I mean, candidates who have been on the trail, campaign trail, against my candidate have been trying to resort to violence and all sorts of unorthodox methods of doing this campaign, not observing the swaps, even if these swaps are supposed to preserve the lives and the health of the very people who are supposed to vote them into power, and ignoring them completely. I saw one of the candidates, for instance, saying that it's useless to wear masks during this time, and I said, oh my God, these are the people who Ugandans must put in a lot of scrutiny, and make sure that the vote is done in such a way that they are not allowed to access power, because if you're not going to be mindful about the health and the life of the voter, then you're not worth really being elected.
Okay, well, Honorable Mike Ssebalu, this election particularly has also given us some very ugly scenes of violence here and there, and this is actually put to your government. And looking at Honorable Kyagulanyi and maybe all the others, it just seems like this time round you in the NRM are feeling a lot of heat and pressure from a contender, and I just want you to help us understand this. Looking at the competition that you have vis-a-vis all the other competitions that you had in 2001, 2006, 2011 and 2016, with what you're actually having today, people think you're either losing ground, you're either losing support over the years, and that is why we are seeing all these very nasty and ugly scenes playing out in this election.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is a very good question, and I want to approach it using four kind of narratives. One, NRM has one agenda in this electoral process, and the agenda is to subordinate itself to the will of the people of Uganda, the majority, to assume leadership. So that's why for us we have only one plan, Plan A, because we believe that power belongs to the people and it is given to them by the Constitution, and they are the ones to give anyone mandate to lead. Those that are competing with us have Plan A and Plan B, which clearly means that they don't have value and respect for the people, and they feel that chances are very high that they can't make it. That's why they are thinking of alternative position. Now that is very telling, and it has a lot to do with the kind of activities that are reflecting themselves in terms of violence. Because if you're not believing in the electoral process, then what else? It has to be something other than democratic, and it has to be something other than the mandate of the people. So that leaves a big question mark. And if you're talking about Plan B, it is not somewhere in a cupboard or a cupboard. It must be something being undertaken, something being planned. And if it is not A, because Plan A is open, Plan A is transparent, talk to the people. So that means Plan B is underground. That means it is being done underground. And so when security, basing on intelligence, are able to pick some of these people, I think it has a lot to tell with matters and factors related to that kind of narrative. When you saw people expressing their displeasure, or they don't agree with something. When you don't agree with something, you can demonstrate peacefully. But if when you see people taking the option of a riot, where people's lives are lost, where people are undressed, where people's property is taken, then again, you need to appreciate where the narrative comes from. So we need to unmask the Plan B, what it is.
Do you know what it is?
It is reflected in unorthodox behavior and activities, because what we have on the table is the electoral process, and then it is free for everyone. You find a man like Katumba, he has made use of Plan A, and he's been able to build some name for himself. So that is one aspect. Now the second aspect is that as NRM, for you to win elections, you need four serious variables. You need a candidate. A candidate with name recognition, and our candidate has that. When you talk about Museveni, people in mind, NRM will come, Pan-Africanism will come, East African integration will come, security will come. There are so many things that are associated resonate with the name. Now that is brand recognition, name recognition, and brand visibility. When you are selling a candidate like that, life is much easier. And there are things people confuse, because at times people confuse popularity or being, appearing to be popular, and greatness. There is one thing, that not all popular leaders are great leaders, but all great leaders are popular leaders. Now ours falls in the category of great and popular, because he has one mandate, tested, and scientific, you can say, is popular, having won the several electoral processes that he has been involved in. He's great. He's been able to do a lot for Uganda, for East Africa, for Africa. So when you talk about great leaders, is in that category. So when you're marketing such a leader, your work is cut out. The second thing you need is message. NRM and candidate Museveni has a clear message under the theme of securing your future. And that can be unpacked into so many things. You'll appreciate that a recent survey indicated that Uganda is among the 5 fastest growing economies, and is only second in Africa, coming next only to Ethiopia. Now, when such information comes from without,
and both are landlocked countries,
and that information is not generated locally, that is internationally recognized, research-based information, and it comes at a time when you are choosing a leader. You really need to have something fundamentally amiss not to go with such a leader, because the economic growth and the economic development and the speed is one of the variables that can inform the future, which is secured. Because then it is talking about increased revenue, it is talking about increased industrialization, it is talking about opportunities for employment, infrastructure development. So that alone is a clear variable. So our message is clear. It was done in a scientific manner. It was well researched. We even launched it before the campaigns. So many people have talked about manifestos. We've never seen them. They are neither on soft nor hard, but they are just talked about, and they vary from day to day. But our message is packaged and is clear, and it is going. The third thing you need in that regard are structures. NRM has the structures, right from SEC, NEC, district, sub-county. Those are structures. That's why the campaign, scientific campaign of our president has been made easy, because of the structural arrangement of our political party. So the president, the candidate has to talk to, is like dealing with the train of trainers. He gets a message, packages it to a leadership of the district, they transcribe it down using the structures. So no party in this country has structures like NRM does, because ours are national in character and they are national in outlook and outreach. So that makes it easy to get the message across. And the final one are resources. Resources, you could mean bit of money here, you could mean infrastructure, but the most important are the human resource. Look at the resource you have in the studio now.
That be the party.
That is the party. That is what we're talking about. That is a resource. When you hear me talk, when you hear Ambassador talk, that is a resource. And we have great such resource, so that the president doesn't have to be in the studio for the great message to be put across in a competent, eloquent, and convincing way.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Now, I'll come to you, Ambassador Mayiga, and Honorable Sebali, you'll also attempt this. Now, 1 month ago exactly on this day, on the 4th of December, in Ghana, there was an election that happened on the 7th of December. The election that was between President Nana, the incumbent, and Mahama Dramani. Now, on this day, they signed what they call the Presidential Elections Peace Pact. And their peace pact was intended to see a post-election period where if one loses the election, then they should always seek redress in the courts of law, and to avoid any violences and stuff like that. Now, there are ideas here of Uganda also having a similar thing. But what you need to know is those that brokered the peace accord in Ghana were the chief imam of Ghana and the Asante Hene, the cultural institution, the cultural leader. Exactly. Now you could see that there was a religious leader on one part, the chief mufti of Ghana, Sheikh Nuhu Shogutu, and you had the Asante Hene, the cultural institution on one side, brokering this peace accord. Some Ugandans think this is the way to go, looking at what is actually happening. Now, I want to bring this to you, and you explain it in that context, where I'm looking at our religious leaders today and our cultural leaders. Can we have something like that, where we can promise Ugandans that we'll go to the polls on the 14th, and we'll cast our votes. Whoever wins will win honorably, and whoever loses will also lose honorably. And if anybody feels discontented with what has happened, they can actually go to court for legal redress. Do we see ourselves getting to such a position, or you are very adamant in NRM that it has to be a win for you and nothing else, and your position is also very adamant that anything has to happen where we do not have to have a common position and say this is what we need to do? Yes, Ambassador.
Yeah, I will not try really to discount what the Ghanaians did by bringing on board cultural leaders and religious leaders to try and put people together even after elections. I'm not trying to discount that. But the Baganda have also a very interesting saying that so if Uganda has done that, taken that path, it does not necessarily mean that Uganda should. Well, if Uganda did, that's okay. It would be okay for cultural leaders and religious leaders coming on board and making sure that there is harmony in as far as the electoral process is concerned. But I don't want really to vouch so much for that, because what Ghana has done may not apply in Uganda. And since we are only 2 weeks shy of the election day, the very cultural institutions that we have and religious leaders we have not done that, I believe that still we can go forward and have this election. Of course, you remember what Archbishop Rwanga was talking about, that we should cancel elections and then vary the constitution so that we can have the elections after 3 years and so on and so forth, when actually the government had already spent lots of money to organize these elections. So there are all sorts of suggestions that can be made. But for me, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm happy that Honorable Mike Saralu mentioned something that is very interesting. The infrastructure on the ground is extremely important for every party to make sure that an election is won. Sometimes even you can have infrastructure and then you lose it. So, I mean, Trump in the US has lost the election only the other day. But that is very important as far as I'm concerned, because the infrastructure we're talking about here, for instance, the Electoral Commission, which is really a very reputable organization that we have in Uganda, although some elements within the opposition have tried to discount it. The parties have been working together under the IPOD, which brought together all these parties, and in my view, I think they've been doing a very good job. And that has calmed the nerves of so many. Probably the situation would have been much worse. But because of the presence of the iPod, it has been possible that parties have been working together. And I want to believe if that spirit continues, which in my view the NRM already has, it has that very strong spirit that we must work towards a peaceful election. And that's why President Yoweri Museveni came out the other day, as you remember, and he said, I'm going to observe the SOPs. He is the only presidential candidate who has actually has respected the standard operating procedures to the latter.
Because I think he brought Corona. Corona is actually working for him. It's in his...
Well, I mean, the whole of Europe is under lockdown. I mean, Corona is a worldwide problem. It's not an exclusive problem of this country, of Uganda, no. So if some people have argued that, I've heard all those arguments before, that President Yoweri Museveni is trying to use Corona, the pandemic, so that he has a mileage over the rest of the candidates who are contesting against him. All of those, in my view, don't really add up. And I think the important one is for us to accept that, yes, these elections are now predictable and regular after every 5 years. People are given the opportunity. Those who want to contest against each other are free to come, and they have always been coming. Kizza Besigye has been trying all the way right from 2001. He has been participating in these elections, and he has been losing them. Yeah, because he failed to build enough infrastructure on the ground in order to have real an impact in as far as politics is concerned in this country. So, in my view, the infrastructure is there. The iPod, it has been doing a very good job in as far as I'm concerned, because each of these political parties has been given an opportunity to lead the iPod. And the other day, so Asuman Basari was chairman of the iPod, and then they met President Yoweri Museveni, and they talked, I don't know what was it talked about when they met. And so for me, that infrastructure is very important. Yes, the Ghanaians have had the opportunity. They have used cultural leaders, they have used religious leaders to, but even in Ghana, even if actually they had that arrangement between the two candidates, the two strong candidates,
Nana and Dramani.
Absolutely. Still after elections there were issues because the loser did not concede, you remember. And conceding has become difficult because that flu has even caught the US itself, because Trump did not concede the election, losing the elections, as you remember. So whatever people try to do, whether it's cultural leaders, whether it is religious leaders coming on board and trying to put people together during, before and after elections, for me, as far as I'm concerned, I know that the important one is for us to have regular and predictable elections. Regular and predictable elections. Well, the other problem which we've been having in this country, as of course you know, is that foreigners have tried to influence the outcome of these elections, because in their view, they think that they can have maneuvers that can bring on board, can bring in probably a new leader in this country, and you have these homosexuals, you have the people who have been fanning the opposition. They are known. The good thing is that these things have come in the open, you know. So those who try to distort this electoral process of ours, I think the biggest problem in as far as I'm concerned.
Honorable Sabalu, on that particular one.
Yeah, on that particular one, actually, there's nothing new that Ghana did that we haven't done. Only that maybe they didn't have it in their constitutional provisions.
The Ghana?
We do have, in our constitution, we do have post-election management procedures. And you've seen how many court cases have been up since. We have a precedent over that. It is nothing new. Even last election, candidate Amama Mbabazi petitioned the court. So in Uganda, it is actually, it is a norm. It is a precedent is there, not once. Kizza Besigye was there several times. So we've always done it. So I don't find it anything for us to learn from. If anything, they must have learned from what we do here.
How about the candidate themselves? Looking at the candidate, for example, Plan B, would you think that Plan B would actually be going to court, or and would you welcome the plan of going to court? Would that be a good thing, or you know
that is part of the electoral process? That would be permissible. But when one talks of Plan B, it is totally out of the provisions. Because this one you have that if you are not satisfied with the elections, you can petition court, and the days are put, everything is put, the entire procedure is there. And when you interpret the electoral law, be it presidential, again you have those variables properly captured. So that is part of the process. But when you talk of Plan B, it is totally out of the legal regime governing electoral processes.
How do you feel that religious leaders are now coming out very openly, standing on the pulpit and actually castigating and saying all these very bad things and reminding the people that anybody who supports President Museveni, it does not even have, I think, half a brain cell or something. We've had all this on social media and everywhere. Isn't it shocking that a religious leader whom you will go to tomorrow for counseling or for prayer or for anything or benediction, and they are talking about your candidate that way, openly, and saying nobody should actually vote for Sebalu and Mayiga's candidate. How do you feel?
Now, I want to be very civil while approaching that matter, because what we need at this point in time is leadership. Leadership, be it by the candidates, be it by the supporters, be it by security, be it by leaders. And when you talk about religious leaders, these are leaders. Once you're a leader, you need to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Now, some leaders have jumped into the populist approach, wanting to say what people want to hear. That's why you hear that COVID is real, and until recently many people didn't want to hear that, and yet they needed to hear it. That's why our candidate took a clear position and was able to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. If I sat here and I pronounced COVID being a myth, there are people who can call in and praise me, but I will have negated on my role as a leader to make such a pronouncement. So leadership is necessary at all times. We have given, we've got now this bag of celebrity, you know, celebrity everything. People end up saying things for purposes of capturing the camera and capturing the news headlines, without interrogating the import and the impact of the statements. So my humble submission is that this time calls for leadership at all levels. You remember when we had the problem of the riots, many leaders came out to castigate security. None came out to castigate the indisciplined criminal tendencies that reflected themselves in the riot. Undressing of women, stealing of people's property. No one castigated it, but they were on one side. Now that is not leadership. If you're a leader, you say security, you didn't do well, there were issues, but you people also be responsible. That is not the way to express your discontent, to express your disagreement with something. Now that is a leader. The one who comes out and is able to balance the statement in terms of apportioning blame wherever it is. But to some leaders, they indicated as if the other people didn't do anything wrong, and therefore they did everything right, and the police did everything wrong and didn't do anything right in trying to normalize and also rescue some people who are being overrun by the indisciplined fellows. So leadership is important, be it religious, be it traditional, be it civil, be it corporate. At a time like this, when you are in a time of disruption, that's when leader comes out. Leadership comes out during crisis. That is, if you're a pilot, the real technical know-how is when you are taking off, landing, and turbulence. But otherwise, when things are okay, you are in autopilot. You can even come and say hello, Jagenda, how are you?
They even sleep.
They even sleep. So at a time like this, we need leadership in all aspects, in all ways, and in all manner of conduct.
Ambassador Mayiga, you're from that background of the church. How do you feel seeing religious leaders castigating and talking all these things about candidates and of course taking open sides in an election like this?
Well, I've been following those arguments from the religious leaders for quite a bit of time, even before the electoral process. And I think, in my view, many of them have gone overboard. Because, first of all, when there's a problem in a society, you must look at its origin. How has it begun? How did it begin? Who started it? okay, you can argue about the consequences and the cause and so on and so forth of that very problem. But the genesis of the problem is extremely important for the religious leaders to understand and then appreciate it. Because in the case of the riots, for instance, in November, like Honorable Mike Sebalu had said, this was a situation that was orchestrated, it was well planned, there was no doubt about it, that the NRM supporters...
Not only planned, conceived.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it had the tacit support from foreigners, yeah? So, cause mayhem, and this was just a precursor of what was supposed to happen, or what was actually going to happen after elections. That was just testing the ground, you know? And so, those things happened. People dressed in yellow were undressed. People were beaten up for as long as you didn't support the other side. The NUP, let's be clear, because it was actually NUP that orchestrated those things. I don't know whether FDC was also involved, but NUP was definitely the architect of those things, you know. Beat women, undress people, destroy people's cars, and all these kinds of things, and they happened. And so when the religious leaders failed to condemn that kind of behavior, I think, in my view, it was the dereliction of duty, because they should have seen this problem and appreciated it and also condemned it. Yes, the security forces, by the way, we have always talked about security forces, because that word force, and we have said it before, they are called security forces. The word force connotes the use of force. That should you go overboard, should you break the law, should you commit a crime, there is a point beyond which the security forces are going to use force against you. And we must understand that one, because if we don't understand it, then there is no reason why we should be arguing about these things. So many religious leaders, not all of them, some of them actually came out and they said, yes, people were wrong that actually did this kind of mayhem in November, and they condemned it. In other words, it's what we call apportioning blame. Yeah, but they were not few. Those voices were very few. They were not as many. So those religious leaders, in my view, who did not condemn those who started this problem, those who rioted, those who burnt cars, those who undressed people dressed in yellow, those who beat up people who they thought were not supporting their side, should have been condemned by the religious leaders. Yeah, and then the other arguments would have come. Yes, of course. Sometimes, of course, the security forces can go overboard and they can make one or two mistakes and so on and so forth. But the genesis of the problem and the peace we are enjoying at this material time has been as a result of having these gallant members of the security forces in this country. And so, in that light, in my view, the religious leaders should have really appreciated what the security forces were doing.
Okay. Talking about your candidate, because the time is actually running out, talking about your candidate. Now, the discussion can't now be on the achievements of the NRM. But you are talking about, he talked about the message, which message is actually capped in this statement of securing a future. And the questions there are from your opponents saying, how do you want to secure our future in 5 years and you've not secured our future in the last 35 years? Is this the time that you can secure our future? And look at quite a number of things. People are saying, yes, what is here that NRM actually wants to secure for us? And in any case, why does President Museveni, who is not of their generation, desiring to actually secure their future? Let's just get to that. I am not even discussing the achievements of the NRM, because whatever has been done has actually been done. You can choose not to see it or not to talk about it, but that's not where we are. Talk about securing the future itself.
It is the job of everybody who calls himself an NRM supporter to continue talking about the achievements of this government, because there are so many. Because if we don't explain, people may think, you know, people somehow, sometimes fail to reason these things out. The achievements of the NRM must be talked about from time to time, and people must be reminded, because kind of they forget. Especially the opposition would like as much as possible to subdue those achievements, so that people say that this government has done nothing.
But Jagenda is a very religious person. Every Sunday we go to church and we are reminded, we are reminded of the 10 Commandments. So it is absolutely necessary that these were written 2,000 years ago. The Bible, it is still the book that we are reading, and we keep reminding ourselves of what happened, where it came from. So even in this, we need to keep reminding people of where we've come from, where we are, and where we are going.
And especially when it comes to peace and security in this country, because there was a time, and people really must be reminded, when we did not have regular and predictable elections. We instead had takeovers and coups. You can talk about 1971, you can talk about 79, you can talk about 85 and then 86 and so on and so forth. Really a period of a lot of instability. Now, the elections, which is bringing every Tom, Dick and Harry into these competitions, are regular and predictable every 5 years, and that we must always talk about it, whether irrespective of whether the opposition wants to hear about it or not. We must continue talking about peace and security. It wasn't in this, we didn't have it in this country as much as we have it at the moment, because of the good leadership that we have in the country.
Honorable Sebalu.
Yeah, there are two things. There is, I want to go like we normally analyze it from the economic aspects. There is a want and a need. There is what you want and there is what you need. In the case of Uganda, we need the leadership of President Museveni. People may want Kyagulanyi as wanting him, but they may not need him at this point in time. So some of us believe that the president we need at this point in time to consolidate the gains and take us to another level is candidate Yoweri Museveni. And the reasons are very clear. When you want anything, when you need something good, for instance, if you want a tailor, do you want someone who started tailoring yesterday? You go for a tested person. People will say that man has been at it for the last 20 years. That is the one everyone will go for. If you want a plumber, you want to go for someone with experience. Experience is a cross-cutting, and it informs most of our decision making. If you want a mechanic, you don't want one who just came out of technical college yesterday. You say there is that man in Endeavour. He's been there for the last, that is what you go for. Then what happens when you come to leadership? Why do you want to use different narratives in terms of deciding a leader? We have a leader who is tested, he's got the education, he's got the experience, he's got the exposure, he's got the expertise, and he's got name recognition and brand visibility. So what do you need as someone who is seriously taking a decision?
So then what is in securing our future or your future? What is there to secure?
You see, securing the future should not be taken literally. Securing the future entails consolidating the gains you've already made, but building new momentum so that then you move. Because the security of today depends on how you've been able. It's like a foundation, the foundation of the house. When you have 5 stories, the foundation is that one, but you secure it with the other variables. So securing the future is a strong foundation that the NRM has created with an ideology. You ask any of these candidates, what is their ideology? Wherever they go,
removing a dictator.
Yeah, you see, and by doing that, you see, one thing they are doing for us, and which is so good, is that they increase the visibility of our candidate, because they can't make any meaningful engagement without mentioning his name. And whenever they mention his name, you are increasing name recognition. He can go and talk without referring to any of them in person. He can do it in generalities as opposition without mentioning a single name, and people will get his message and they will appreciate it. But for these ones to make any meaningful impact, they must severally mention his name, and by doing that they are creating even more visibility for him as a candidate, because then he becomes the subject matter, and he informs and dictates the narrative.
Ambassador Mayiga, we are seeing lately so many people crossing from NUP and all the other parties joining the NRM. Some are actually even throwing the candidature, allowing and letting for the NRM to go through unopposed. We saw this in the 80s during the UPC times, and people are saying this is not the first time that's happening. It happened during Obote's UPC of the 1980. You were here and you know what actually happened. People are saying, by just seeing what is actually happening today, where you at the NRM are buying out your opponents to make sure that you ride through unopposed in many of the positions, don't you, they think it's actually that because you've lost the support of the people, and that's why you are now going through buying everybody in that way. What does that have to tell us, where people think it is now history being repeated itself?
Well, people are free to call it history, but as far as what has been happening, like for instance, one example I can give vividly is what happened in West Nile. and parts of the north like in Acholi and so on and so forth, and even parts of actually Lango. People gave reasons as to why they were joining the NRM, and one of them was that this group has displayed itself as one that really believes in violence. For instance, the people in the north of this country have actually gone through a very difficult time in the past, and as far as violence is concerned. And so when NUP goes to northern Uganda and he preaches a message of violence, definitely the people are going to resist that. And so I'm not surprised that actually people in West Nile who have actually faced the brunt of violence, and insecurity, people from Acholi, people from Lango, even people in Buganda, because they have faced this kind of insecurity before. And so if somebody or a political party actually comes out very openly with the message of using violence as a means to score politically or even access political power, people are not gullible in this country. They're not stupid, because they're going to reason things out, and they say, look, between Museveni and this group NUP, which believes in violence, which actually it does, because a little bit of it came out the other day in November, if you remember, if Ugandans remember. They are not going to be in that kind of group, and therefore I'm not surprised that quite a number of people, those who initially got excited about NUP, have actually left it and they have joined the NRM. It's not really something that has been happening as a result of the NRM buying people, and because how much money do you have? Because the other day I saw the president saying that actually the NRM doesn't have money, campaign money, they have run short of money. So if you were to buy these millions of people and bring them to NRM, how much money would you use? The fact of the matter is simple. I think the opposition has lost it. President Yoweri Museveni is winning this election, and that's why those who look far are joining him. And so I'm not surprised that actually quite droves and droves of people from the NUP and the rest of the political parties are actually joining NRM.
Yeah, I think this is the easiest narrative. One, you cannot sustain managing people's expectations based on lies. You simply cannot. So people are running out of excuses. You are telling lies, you are exciting them, but time is a good function in telling where ideology and serious political engagement is. But I want to put a question to you. There are so many DP members who crossed NUP. Are you suggesting that they were bought by NUP? That goes to show you the quality and quantity of our opposition. You have a vice president of a political party supporting a candidate of another political party when his party has a candidate. Now that is the quality and quantity of the opposition you have in Uganda. So those that have serious consideration and political future are able to see where ideology is. The Betty Kamias of this world, the Anyuas of this world, the Nachinjis of this world, because you are able to see sense. And that's what makes NRM attractive, the ideology. Because there is an agenda, there is a clear ideology, it's not about positions. Now in the opposition, majority of the people are positioning for positions. That's why they are not willing to grow their parties. Rather they jump on any party that comes. When Besigye came, they jumped on him. Now NUP has come, they are jumping on him. Mbabazi came, they jumped on him. In NRM, we also have our challenges. We have a bit of disagreements here and there, but the difference is that based on the ideology of our party, we have internal mechanisms of engaging our disagreements, resolve them for the best of growing our party. But for the opposition, the solution is always in the newcomer. They always jump at anything new in terms of being able to capture a position here or two. That's why you saw senior members of DP encamping en masse to a party with no ideology, with no known foundation, a party that was bought. You know, you go buy a party that is on sale and you jump into such a party. What is the foundation? What is the basis? So that is the kind of opposition you have. And those that are able to come to the NRM are the ones who are even more politically alert within such outfit. So they should be praised. They have foresight and they are well-intentioned.
Well, finally, your final comments before we get out of studios.
Now, my final comment is that we have 10 days to go. Let us manage the final lap responsibly. Candidates lead by example. Be exemplary in the manner, in the conduct of your campaigns. in terms of what you say and what you do, because it has a lot of bearing on what your followers will take up. Just like NRM, our candidate has been very exemplary. Likewise, the followers have been exemplary. We are not the people to go around provoking and causing mayhem, because the leader has lived by example. So I want to encourage other candidates to do likewise. And to the supporters, I want you to appreciate that this is a context, and Uganda will be there after elections, and Uganda is big enough for all of us. So let's do politics with dignity and decorum. Let's be respectful. Let's be appreciative of each other. We need each other, and we are meant for each other, because we are all Ugandans, and Uganda is for all of us.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Honorable Mike Sebalu, from the NRM political party. Finally, from you, Ambassador Maiga.
Only two things. The plan B of Kizza Besigye and Kyagulanyi.
Kizza Besigye is not in the elections. Why?
Yeah, but he mentioned it as plan B, and it applies to both of them. It's just violence. And Ugandans must reject violence in this electoral cycle. Number two, I just call upon all Ugandans to vote President Yoweri Museveni. Yeah.
And all the NRM flag bearers.
Absolutely.
Because President Museveni, without a parliament, without district councils, without sub-county councils, that would be washing and then drying in a dirty place.
Okay.
So let's vote for the bus. That is the symbol to look out for. And once you do that, the victory of candidate Museveni and the victory of NRM begins with you. Don't imagine that someone else will give that victory. Your vote must be part and parcel of the agenda of victory.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for allowing to join us on Good Morning Uganda Extra here today at UBC. We thank you so much, Honorable Mike Sebalu, and we thank you so much, Ambassador Henry Maiga. My name is Jagenda Semakola Ziksoka. To also just remind you, we are counting down. 10 days to go, but remember, COVID is with us. Now, you need to keep yourselves safe and alive to be able to watch and to witness 14th of January. Now, you can only be alive if you keep yourself safe from Corona or COVID-19, and you can only be alive if you keep yourself away from anything violent, because you may survive Corona and you die in violence. You may survive the violence and you die in Corona. So, meaning we need to shun the two variables, violence and to keep ourselves safe from the coronavirus. We need to be here to witness the 14th of January and also be in the post-14th January Uganda, because the world is not ending on that day. We shall be here to continue. We need to be here in 2031 and possibly 2041 and maybe 2051 and so on and so forth. My name is Jagana Semakola Ziksoka, thanking all of you and saying good morning. Bye for today. Thank you so much.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra. Uganda Decides 20